So my first question, it's now been 24 hours. What were your first thoughts when you woke up this morning?
Well, I think my first thoughts are parallel to some of the other thoughts. The adrenaline has kind of run off, and now you're just kind of reflecting on yesterday. And we had a great conference this morning, and a lot of encouragement to the guys, a lot of hugs, and even across the aisle. So I think it's been an encouragement for many of us.
Can you just tell us what you witnessed yesterday morning?
Yeah, I get a chance to be the pitcher for the team, so that I was already finished pitching. What really we talked about even last night in our members meeting, our team members meeting, and even today was just how long this guy had been casing us out, realizing, and you've seen this guy a time or two kind of in the background. He joined the Y, which is adjacent to the ball field, a couple months ago. But to have this kind of intentionality to plot basically these assassination attempts, it was a miracle that, as I talked about last night, and Speaker Ryan had asked me to pray for the entire conference that we had yesterday, both houses, and I talked about that as far as people back home praying for us, because there was no doubt there was a hedge of protection that was going on yesterday afternoon, or yesterday morning, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like God was with you all at the practice?
There is no question about it. When the gentleman fired on Trent Franks, or gentleman playing third base, a former colonel, how he missed him is inexplicable. There's just no way with that kind of assault rifle that he had. But each person in that chaos, 50, 60 rounds being shot. Of course, Steve Scalise is in and out of surgery, and our thoughts and prayers are still with him. But had God not raised up those two agents yesterday and put a hedge of protection around us, we would be talking about 15 to 20 deceased members of Congress this morning.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard from Scalise since he's been in the hospital?
We have not. We've been talking people that have been over there, our Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. What we're trying to do, even as a former pastor, your instinct is to go and administer to the family, but right now they're still being in the midst of another surgery scheduled this morning. We want to make sure that we're giving them space, but we did have a time of prayer, and we'll do so tonight at the game as well.
Yes, and your family is in town for the game. How did you describe this to your children?
Sure. Well, the first thing you do is you call them and say, because it's anytime it's this much attention and on every channel with breaking news, you want to reassure them that it's okay, that you're okay, especially even those of us who have parents who watch the different news and hear the different stories. And once you cover those bases, then you sit down, when you have a chance to sit down with your children, specifically for those that have younger children. Our coach had a 10-year-old son there, and it was, still get a little emotional thinking about it, having several of the members literally cover him in the dugout, and even Brad Winstrup, who is a former Army surgeon, crawling out and going out to take care of Scalise, even in the middle of gunfire. A lot of heroism yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I spoke with Senator Langford yesterday, who told me the majority of his conversations on the Hill have been about the death threats that lawmakers have received, particularly in the past couple of months. Have you received any threats?
Our threats have been, listen, we're going to take care of you, we're going to do this. Nothing specifically that we're going to kill you. We've had some, quote, die-ins at our office. Many members, even with children, even as young as 20 months, have had their children threatened. It's really reached a feverish pitch over the last several months, and as I quoted in my prayer yesterday, with the Apostle Paul talking about make sure that our speech is seasoned with salt and with grace. Another lady asked me this morning, does that change your positions? No, you can do both. You can represent Christ, even in D.C. We're not called to any place where we're exempt from being a light for Christ, even here. But you can also hold fast to your principles and to your values, where there's life issues, whether it's personal responsibility or limited government. Those things are fundamental tenets not only to our positions and policy, but to many of us to our faith. And those positions cannot be compromised. But in doing so, we can still represent with a certain amount of integrity and a tone and a spirit that represents Christ, and ultimately, I believe, has a much more powerful effect.
Mm-hmm. So there's clearly a very negative tone around the nation in the past couple of months. We've really seen that. How does Congress come together and lead by example and address this divisiveness around the country?
Yeah, I think it's important for leaders to speak out. You have to set the example. whether you want to be in the spotlight or not, that's no longer optional when you run and specifically serve in the United States Congress, and Senate, governors, and certainly Vice President, President. All of us have a responsibility to set that tone. There are strong differences, as we talked about, yet we can discuss those and we can talk about those without bringing the rhetoric. Now, a lot of this, in fact, I got a little bit of pushback yesterday because I said this was obviously an attack on Republican members of Congress. I was trolled a little bit saying that was overly partisan, but the gentleman very clearly had set this out, had moved here, and specifically talked about Republican being part of the Taliban and we've got to destroy Donald Trump and company. You can get a pretty good idea of someone's bent or what they were wanting to or what he was attempting to do yesterday. And we've seen this continue to expound with comedians that have done some things here. This park in the play in the park that had basically the killing of the president. Those kinds of things only fuel those who are not able to separate sometimes the reality versus fiction. And I think those who are behind those events, those who participate in those events are part of the concern that I see in the days ahead.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like as an elected official there needs to be more security for you all?
You know, I've thought about that, probably so in some circumstances, but maybe this is the pastor talking in me. I like being out among the people. We just did 4 town halls in one day a couple of weeks ago in North Carolina, our home state. I like being able to hear from people. Whether they agree or disagree, I want that opportunity to explain why I believe the way that I do, whether it's personal responsibility or limited government.
Yeah. And there's a video going around of footage from when the shooting happened. Have you seen it? And if so, what is it like to watch that?
I have seen it. It's certainly surreal for all the guys, I'm sure, that were there. The gentleman, I believe, was in the dog park there that had his cell phone running. Just to hear those repeated shots, for many guys, I'm sure that's troubling. We happen to have 3 or 4 veterans on our team, and they were immediately, it was putting them into a combat mode, but without an ability to defend themselves yesterday. So I'm sure it was unique for those guys as well. But we're excited about the game this evening. We believe that can bring a certain amount of healing. Somebody said yesterday, should we have a moment of silence? And we said, no, if we do, that's fine, but let's make sure we have prayer as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And how can our viewers pray for all lawmakers going forward?
Yeah, I think obviously the first thing is protection, but also God's guidance. You know, God's promised us in Proverbs 3 that when we trust in Him, that He will make our path straight. So as we go through these different crises, these are stopgaps or checkpoints to make sure that we are following what God wants in all of our lives. And I believe that's a direct result and potential movement forward by people praying for us. We talked about that yesterday. I mentioned that last night again in our team members meeting. I believe yesterday part of the miraculous component of the lives that were saved were due to the amount of people each and every day that are uplifting and praying for us, and we certainly ask for those prayers to continue.
Yeah, and a final question, a little more lighthearted.
Sure.
How does the team feel today? You ready to take on the Democrats?
We are ready to win, absolutely, and it's a privilege to be able to pitch, and hopefully we can deliver, and we're excited. I think since I've been here, it's 1-1, so this is kind of the third annual game. But it's for a great cause, raising charity, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Boys and Girls Club and a few other charities that we can support. So hopefully we'll have a good crowd. And yes, we are playing to win.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Congressman Walker.
It's been my privilege. Thank you.